All right, are we ready? I guess we're ready. I can hear my voice loud and clear in the house. Thank you all for staying here with us. Once again, my name is Arlo Haskell, Executive Director of Key West Literary Seminar. I'm here and very happy to be here with Gary Shteyngart, and we are going to be talking mostly, maybe not entirely, but certainly mostly about this really wonderful, hilarious, amazing newest book of his called Vera or Faith. It's all told by a 10-year-old girl through the perspective of a 10-year-old girl named Vera, and it's absolutely wonderful. We've had some really great interviewers and moderators up here on stage who've done like a whole lot of preparation. Yesterday, Bernard Schwartz, interviewing Colm Toybeen, said he had stayed up, late night after night watching YouTube videos of Colm. I haven't watched a single YouTube video in preparation for this conversation.
I do have a lot of YouTube videos.
I know, I didn't watch any of them.
Yeah. That's what I'm mostly known for.
So but I did have some help. I did outsource a little bit of my preparation to my 7-year-old daughter, Zadie. So Zadie wrote something for me this morning. She asked me to read it, and okay. I asked her if I could begin with this. So let me begin with this because I think she gets to a lot of what we want to talk about.
Okay, so cool.
Questions. Why, when, where, how? Why, when, where, how? A question I ask almost every day. Because a question without the meaning and statement is not a question unless you kick it up, take a break, and think. 'Twas then what didn't sound like a question is one and only for life, but not when you know why, when, where, and how. That's 80.
That's a 7-year-old child?
That's my 7-year-old daughter's.
You've got to be really careful because she might end up becoming a writer.
Yeah.
That is no life for anyone, I can tell you. Wow.
So Zadie asks why, when, where, and how, and I want to start with that last of the 5 W's with the who. Tell me about Vera.
Mm-hmm. Well, before I start, let me just say how insanely happy I am to be back. This is one of my what the young call safe spaces. I am so safe in Key West. I usually take a lot of Xanax before a reading, but I don't need it here. No one's going to hurt me here, right? I was just having my stone crab at Eaton's, and this guy walks by and he says, "I've seen you here 4 days in a row, and you're always eating that stone crab." And I thought, I'm already a local. I'm part of the scenery, I've lived in Manhattan most of my life. Nobody knows or cares who I am. This is just incredible. So thank you for having me back. Who is Vera? By the way, so we're going to go through the pedantic thing. It's in the Russian pronunciation is Vera, but we're going to say Vera. We're in America, goddammit. So I think Vera is fine. Vera means faith in many Slavic languages, including Russian. So writing this book, trying to mimic the voice of a 10-year-old, or at least the internal thought processes of a 10-year-old, was a little bit of a leap of faith for me. But Vera is 10 years old. She is half Korean-American by ethnicity and half Soviet Jewish, right, what you know. And she has an adopted mom who is a blue-blood Boston Brahmin WASP. And she also has a brother, or half-brother. And she goes to one of New York's G&T gifted and talented, not gin and tonic, sadly. But yeah, that would be a great school. I think that's called Oberlin. But yeah. She goes to a gifted and talented school because she's very smart. And she has trouble. She's very smart, but she has trouble understanding the world, which is certainly where I was as a 10-year-old and probably still am today. But so she keeps a diary of language. to remind, because language is her access to the world. The people that I've met after this book came out who have read the book, a lot of them are women who are, in their 40s, 50s, 60s, and they say, that reminds me so much, this character reminds me of me because I also, would jot down words because that was my way. I was awkward as a kid, as most readers and writers are, and this was my way of accessing the world. And when I was a kid, growing up as an immigrant from Russia, we would read, it was kind of cute, we would keep these, my father, like all Soviet Jewish men of that generation, was a computer programmer, and so he was learning COBOL and Fortran and all those awesome languages that nobody speaks anymore. But we would have these IBM punch cards, and on one side of it we would write down the English, and on the flip side the Russian. So we would always be quizzing each other. So you would have all the words that Russians, in their 30s need to know, like stroke, heart attack, diabetes, early onset, stuff like that. So we would always be like, yeah, stroke, infarct. Okay, good. So that Vera also reminded me of myself quite a bit. And also I do have a kid. He's a boy, not a girl, but he also does go to a gifted and talented school. Like listening to him and actually hearing, he's great, but his friends who are girls have a much faster emotional development when they're this age. Men do catch up in their late 40s, but it takes takes a while. Now, going back to Sadie's brilliant, sort of the questioning that she's come up with, which I'm still boggled by. I would say the when is an interesting thing because, like several of my novels, it's set kind of in the future, sort of a little bit,
Yeah. How far in the future are we set here?
I don't know. I always say, given the way things work today, next Tuesday, maybe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I published Super Sad True Love Story in 2010. That has the National Guard in the streets of New York, of American cities. It has an invasion of Venezuela. So yeah, give that one a look again. It's or just turn on the news. Either one. So that was one thing, and then I guess when we're talking about when. I don't know, maybe, so there's a lot of AIs in this thing, right? So, and recently I was in San Francisco and I took a Waymo. And the Waymo was actually, I hate most technology, but this was actually really cool because it didn't talk to me. I hate, in cars. It smelled great. It was just really nice. Put on good music, asked me what music I wanted. But the self-driving cars in this are very annoying. There's one called Stella that is always up in everybody's business and always trying to ingratiate herself into everyone's lives. But I think the most important sort of difference in the book is the political climate. Actually, no, it's not really that much of a difference. So we're set in an era where there's something called the 5/3 Amendment or the 5/3 Compromise.
There's a constitutional convention
coming up where people who can trace their heritage back to the Revolutionary War will get 5/3 of a vote instead of, I guess, 3/3 of a vote. This was written before the last administration had taken power, or even this was way in the Biden era.
So 5/3 in the Constitution originally.
The 3/5 compromise,
there
which
was
gave
the 3/5.
African Americans only 3/5 of a vote. Or no, sorry, they gave them no vote, but they were counted as 3/5 of a person for for when you gauge the population of southern states.
And what's happening here is a constitutional convention to give 5/3 to white people who can trace their heritage back
to the Revolutionary War.
So it's kind of reparations for white people.
It's reparations for white people, which we are so desperately needed in our society. I mean, thank God we've gotten to this point, because I feel bad,
And I was doing the math earlier because I was curious.
Yeah.
So 5/3 is like almost 3 times 3/5. I don't know if you care about the math.
I mean, I think you're
it's
like
a big
Vera.
chunk of the vote.
You're a STEM guy.
Yeah.
It's really cool. No, I haven't done the math because I'm really bad at math. My kid is good at math. He's in one of these schools, but I can't do math to save my life. Except
And
for
you wrote about the 5/3. This was before. It was certainly before the Turning Points conference a couple of weeks ago, where the
Yes.
concept of heritage Americans had a lot
Well,
of play.
actually, Heritage Americans has been around for slightly longer because, so this book came out July 7th was the pub date, and July 8th, J.D. Vance gave a speech where he said, he used the term exceptional and heritage Americans, which is the terms used in the book, and he said, but he just said they should only reach back to the Civil War, not the Revolutionary War. So, which is interesting too, because the Civil War obviously has a certain valence when you're talking about race and stuff. So, but I was so fascinated that it was a day after that term had come up, and I know Usha Vance is a huge reader. So I was wondering, it's a short book, I'm like, did she read it real fast, and was she like, JD, wake up, I got a great new way to, disenfranchise our children.
Yeah, I mean, that in particular is just extraordinary. I mean, when I asked you when does it take place, next Tuesday, it really, this book feels like it is, in this case, it's already in the past. There's not a constitutional convention, but it's very much part of mainstream political dialogue right now.
People ask me, like, why do you keep writing speculative fiction or stuff that's set slightly in the future? And I'm like, it's impossible to write about the present. There's no more present left. Every day, did you wake up 2 weeks ago thinking, oh, we're about to, take out the president in Caracas, Venezuela, I mean, every day is a fresh new outrage. We're moving at such a fast clip, and everything, and AI obviously is going to accelerate this, that I think, you look back at, obviously, like most people, I love 19th century fiction. It's truly incredible. But when Tolstoy started his storied career, there wasn't that much, the train systems developed a lot more, but he famously died outside a train station. But really, a horse and carriage was a horse and carriage at the end of his tenure as a writer, whereas now it's impossible. Everything is so accelerated that I think we're living in this strange, quasi-futuristic space at all times. So when I write this stuff, even though people say, well, it's speculative fiction, the 5/3 Amendment, like we were talking about, a day later, all of the terms in the book became reality once they left that large man's bearded lips. So, I don't know. No offense to giant bearded people, you're amazing.
Another thing that's happened in this book is the cycle through states. So presumably a group of states have changed their own border restrictions.
Right. So a woman who's coming into the state has to submit a pregnancy test to make sure that she didn't get pregnant on the way out and is now leaving for a state that allows abortion. Which, by the way, also it became, I can't remember what Republican lunatic mentioned this in Congress, but that is an idea they're considering in certain states. Mm-hmm. So once again, I seem to be part of the Heritage Foundation in setting the agenda for future fascism. I'm so incredibly happy about that. Oh. Way to go, Gary. Yeah.
And as you've mentioned a couple times, AI has a large role to play in this book. Vera tells us that she has only two friends. One is actually a friend of her parents, her Aunt Cecile, and the other is Caspi.
Yeah. And so Caspi is a computer named after Garry Kasparov, and so he's a chessboard. He was made in Korea So, I do a lot of essays. I write a lot of essays, and I'm about to have a collection coming out this year called The Sensualist, which is all about my... Yeah, it is very funny and sensual. See, I'm already selling my next book. That's what a real writer does. But so it's a collection of essays. And so for this, I wrote a piece for, I think, the Smithsonian, is that still around, or did Trump destroy it? I don't know. But the Smithsonian Magazine, woo, yeah. And I went to Korea because Korea has decided to build some of the craziest robots in existence. Of course they will, that's what they do. Including, I'm not kidding, they developed a robot, Hemingway would have loved this, for the Toreador market in Spain. So it's this bull robot that charges at you. He charged at me. Really hit me kind of in the groin, very painful. They were all laughing. But if you read some of my essays, there's enough going on down there. Yeah. So, the Toreador market. So anyway, Kaspi is a Korean computer, Korean AI, and he's very nationalist. And Vera has a mom that she's been searching for forever. It's her birth mom, who's Korean American. So Kaspi plays a big role in this journey she undertakes. I'm not going to spill all the beans, but this journey she undertakes to find her birth mom.
Yeah.
So AI, as much as there's horrible, awful AI in the story, like Stella the car, I did want to, have some decent AIs as a friend for poor Vera, who is very friendless.
Yeah, the AI in this book, it provides her with some comfort and some counsel that is worthwhile,
Yeah.
but it is also surveilling her.
Everyone is constantly surveyed, as we all are now. The moment the moment you mention something, your phone will hear it, and you'll blah blah blah. So, I'm getting a lot of stone crab ads.
I want to hear more about your. Tell me more about surveillance and your interest in writing about surveillance in some of these books, especially as a Russian.
As a Russian, look, this is one of the reasons Vera came about as a character was that I remember my Soviet days very well. I left when I was very young, but it really made quite an imprint. And so I essentially moved from one failing authoritarian superpower to this place. What is it with me and failing superpowers? I've been stopped at the border in China. They're like, no, not this guy. We're just starting here. But there's a really fascinating it really is interesting I remember watching reports on Soviet TV that was just all lies. Everything was a lie. Farmer exports are great. Wheat harvest reaches new heights. This is when we were called grain Jews, because in 1979, the harvests were actually so bad. Brezhnev and Carter made a deal where 50,000 grain Jews were traded for X amount of tons of wheat. So I was traded for a baguette, essentially, which I don't know who got the better part of that deal. But the point is, everything was a lie. And now, increasingly, even CBS is now going to be 100% lies all the time. So when I was thinking of what it's like to grow up in an authoritarian society, I just thought, I could look at my own child and his cohort. This is the beginning of what it's like, where everything is a lie. Car runs over, a woman gets shot 3 times. No, she was a terrorist who was going to kill somebody. And so it's this, and this was exactly what the Soviet Union did. So this was the crazy part, is that after the collapse of the Soviet Union in 91, my hope, and I can't say I love Russia, but I love my hometown of St. Petersburg. I dream about it all the time. It's a beautiful place. One of the more liberal cities in Russia, although that's not saying much. But I've always dreamed that Russia would acquire some of the trappings of America, be it a civil society, rule of law. And the amazing thing is the exact opposite happened. America acquired so much of the trappings of Russia, and we have a leader who openly pines for the leader of Russia. It's so sad, It's almost like you can't outrun history, or at least I can't outrun history. And why couldn't we move to Denmark? Well, maybe not Denmark, sorry. They're about to lose most of their landmass, but some nice, I don't know, Belgium, is that a thing? Something. Or Key West, if it really does secede as all the flags promise, which please try. I will be your first, you're the poet laureate, I'll be the stone crab eater laureate of Key West.
So, Gary is very funny, as you can all tell. You're very funny on the page, and your humor, I was thinking about it, your humor is very generous towards characters in the book for the most part, but very lacerating towards the society, the world that they inhabit. Tell me about balancing, I guess, humor and kind of criticism in your work.
Yeah. Look, everything I've written has been very, very political. Again, as a child of 2 superpowers, that's a no-brainer for me. But and I think, and also I'm thinking of Absurdistan, which was all about oil politics, which is oddly enough kind of, if you have an extra $13, that definitely is quite.
It's right out there in the bookstore.
It's right out there. Great cover. That was for a while what was called an accessory book. So hipsters on the L train to Bushwick and Williamsburg would just hold it up as a kind of mating signal. We sold 80,000 copies that way. It was incredible.
Wow.
The whole male population of Bushwick bought one. It was incredible. This doesn't happen anymore. Nobody reads. But But sorry, what the hell is the question?
So how do you
Oh, right, the
how do you
person,
write
yeah.
funny? How do you write funny, and how do you balance it with criticism?
Let me say this: that first of all, it's the private versus the public. That's the really big thing. Because if you're writing about a messed up society, you are writing about people navigating it, but they're also falling in love, having kids, deciding if they want cinnamon on their oatmeal at breakfast. The mundane stuff continues. You don't just all of a sudden, you don't wake up saying, oh my God, well, maybe these days some of us do, but it's a combination. It's also, one of my favorite books ever was, you don't read them here in America, but all the smart people still left in Russia, many have fled, but the 9 of them left all love Sergei Dovlatov. Very unknown writer here, but you can't find him in English. His best book, which is very instrumental to the book I'm thinking of writing next, is called Kompromiss, which means compromise in Russian. And it's about the daily compromises one makes in a society. And look, I know all about this. I teach at Columbia, where there's a lot of talk about what you can and can't say. Mm-hmm. So already this is beginning, if you work in a law firm, if you work in almost, any kind of top-end institution, is undergoing a certain amount of compromise. This is how it begins, and also how it ends, where you're like, well, okay, I'll do this, but I won't do that. And then I'll do this, but maybe not that. So all the, even Vera in the book, right? She is on the debate team, and she has to debate. They're having a debate about the 5/3 amendment, and she has to debate she's given the pro side of 5/3. So she has to debate for her own disenfranchisement as a woman of color. But she does it anyway, because she wants an A+. The pie is so shrinking, that in a competitive school like this gin and tonic school that I mentioned before, she has to actually argue against herself to win this A+, which she does.
And she's also doing it for friendship, and in that friendship, she's recruited another person who will be disenfranchised.
Exactly.
And
she's inherited a girl whose parents are Japanese diplomats, who also will never be able to vote, get the full vote if this amendment passes, and they're both arguing for it, and which I also see. I see people who have absolutely no reason to vote MAGA, including recent immigrants. Who have been naturalized. This is a party that literally says we want to denaturalize 100 million Americans. That's you, buddy. And you still are going to vote for them out of, I don't know what calculus, but there it is. So all this stuff I find fascinating, because I find look, think about it. So many of the books I've written are about love in one way or another, whether it's familial love, like in this book, love between friends. Our Country Friends was that. Probably the book that I'm most known for, Super Sad True Love Story, was a love story between two people, a romantic love story. But there's always 2/3 of the book may be about that particular familial friendship or romantic love, but there's always something right stage left, stage right that is happening that slowly sucks these people in and then spits them out, sucks them in. It does, because this is a daily interaction, a daily series of compromises that one engages in. And again, if I hadn't grown up in Russia, if I hadn't had parents who lived under Stalin, and so they may have moved here, but they brought Stalin with them in many ways. I mean, they did the most wonderful thing that they could have done. They brought me here, and so many people stayed. And they gave me this incredible gift, which at age, 50 years after they brought me here, is now becoming to look very like, it's like a 50-year reprieve, not a full-time emancipation. So I don't know. It's, but definitely a lot of their instincts about the world come, because how could they not? This is when you grew up. Mm-hmm. So when I'm writing something like Vera, and by the way, Vera, like I've said before, it means faith. And ultimately this book is probably, if I dare to say it, my sweetest book in some ways, because, well, first of all, it's a 10-year-old child. It's not going to be the same kind of, narcissist schmuck that I have as many of my other protagonists. But also because, as a parent especially, it's hard for me not to have faith in the next generation. That's all I have, is that they can somehow clean up the mess that we've thrust upon them for reasons that they probably can't even comprehend. They have so much work, sadly, to do. People always say, do the work. Well, they really do have to do the work on an environmental, political, social, individual, you name it level. It's so much work, and I feel so sad. But then again, you have characters like Vera, who's so smart and so loving. She just wants, one of the things she's trying to do is keep her parents together, because they're always fighting. She's trying to make a friend in school. She really she has some, social, emotional issues, but she's really trying in every way possible to be a part of the world. And the world is so cruel around her.
A couple of conversations on stage have talked about, what comes first for different writers in the novel. Does it start with the character? Does it start with the setting? Does it start with the plot? So, what came first here, and then how did you come to wanting to tell it through the eyes of a 10-year-old girl?
Well, I'll tell you this. So for 3 books now, I have written about 200 pages of a draft of a book. And then I have this editor, David Ebershoff, wonderful editor. I think there's some writers who have David as an editor as well at Random House. He's a very gentle, kind of waspy, diplomatic guy. So he won't be like, oh, Gary, these 200 pages suck. He'll always take me out to a fancy omakase lunch. I always know things are going wrong when omakase pops up. And he's like, Gary, what do you think this book is about? And I'm like, fuck. Great. So I was with my family on vacation. We went to Korea and Japan, and I was flying back, 14-hour flight, and I had a meeting with him the next day. And something told me, I was like, oh, God, no. Because he did say omakase, and I'm like, oh, here we go. So I'm flying back, and I'm having my martini. And often, I find that a lot of what I write and think about happens at 30,000 feet, especially on these long, boozy flights. So I'm flying, and I started watching Kramer versus Kramer. And I loved that movie as a kid. It was one of the first movies we saw when we came here. We were so impressed because, boy, these Americans were such nice. In Russia, when marital fight, everyone's punching and kicking. And here, this language, they're just talking to each other, and they're lawyers. But, it felt so sophisticated. So I rewatched it, and obviously it holds up great. Meryl Streep, Dustin Hoffman, mwah. But there's a kid in there, Billy or Bobby or some guy, and I thought, what is his point of view on all this? Because he's just sort of the hot potato between them, and he's like a little kid. But as I'm watching it, I start to think, and then I start to think about Henry James's What Maisie Knew, and then I started thinking of my usual, slightly futuristic motif, and it just came to me by the end of the flight, 14 hours later. I stayed up, and I just kept scribbling notes for a plan B in case the omakase went wrong. And then I had the plan B, and I gave it to my editor, and he said, yeah, maybe this. Try that instead. And like a good immigrant, I always try to meet my deadlines, and this was due in 53 days.
Oh, wow.
And it's a short book, as you know. So I just went completely hog wild. In fact, I started to get this vertigo that I never had before because I was just typing all day long. Usually, like most writers, I write 2-3 hours a day. Then I see my shrink. Then the 6 p.m. writer's crying hour at Cafe Sabarsky. It's a busy schedule, but I really worked my butt off to get this done in 53 days, but I kept falling down, and I saw New York's top vertigo specialist, Dr. Roma, and he put me in this giant space helmet. I'm not even kidding. You talk about science fiction, right? And he threw me on a couch. This is what you do to test for some kind of crystal in your ear. Some of you know this. And he said, I think this is psychiatric. And if I had a ruble for every time someone has said that to me, I'd be as rich as Putin, So, but the moment I had my not omakase, he took me to Wendy's and was like, it's great, Then it stopped, and I've been fine ever since. Thank you. All right.
So, thinking about winding it back to the theme of paying attention, I guess what makes it so effective that Vera is telling this is telling a story. She writes down all the things that she doesn't understand about adult life. That she doesn't understand. A lot of curse words go into her diary. 10 reasons why mommy should not leave daddy.
Yeah, which is so biographical. That's what I would do as a kid. 'Cause my parents would always fight, and I would always try to come up with reasons why they should stay together.
Right.
Not good reasons, frankly, but
And daddy doesn't say anything nice about mommy, so her list is shorter for why.
There's almost nothing. These are real putts.
And I guess, you know, the daddy drinks too much. He cries in his little pool, which is his hot tub.
Yeah.
They pay attention to all of the wrong things.
Yeah.
What should we be paying attention to reading it in terms of the story, in terms of the politics, in terms of the character, in terms of parenting? As a
Parenting,
not to ask you for parenting advice, but as a parent of a 10-year-old girl.
As a parent of a 10-year-old girl. So listen, I mean, I would say, and it's interesting because I hope that this would come up more, actually, when the book came out. It really didn't, but one of the things I kind of was absolutely fascinated by is education. How we educate our kids. I did also I went to, what do you call it, Stuyvesant High School, which is a math nerd school in New York, I'm sure. My sense is that 90% of the people in Key West are from New Jersey or New York, but yeah, you know who you are. Sometimes Philly. But, you know, yeah, Philly, all right, here we go. Never Scranton. No, but you know, these schools, whether they're private schools or these gifted and talented schools, they're so hardcore. I almost failed out of Stuyvesant. That's how I ended up at Oberlin. It was like I could, you know, trigonometry or calculus, whatever the hell that was. I was like, no, none for me, thank you. But I remember I still have dreams about that school because it was so competitive. I remember there were these Westinghouse competition, and kids would sabotage each other's projects and burn down each other's Bunsen burners. And this is back in the 80s. You know, today it's I don't know, I'll have a viral infect your computer. I don't know what they do, but it's like we position them to be so ambitious and aggressive. Mm-hmm. And then what do we expect when this is our leadership? You know, granted, this isn't their generation, but the message we're sending out is that the world is so hopeless, that there's so little pie left that they have to prepare the world's largest fork and knife to stab at it and to stab their competitors with it. And it's just so sad. So poor Vera, you know, her parents keep telling her grades don't matter. And at the same time, you know, she gets an A-. Her mom's over at the principal's office being like, look, she had a bad night, you know. So it's a sad message. And I know, at the same time, I know I'm partly guilty of it too. Like, you know, my kid gets into a great school, I'm really proud of him. I say, you did really great, and I'm always proud of that. But at the same time, it's like, what are we doing? You know, we're not, and because systems like this don't even always meritocratically reward the best and the brightest, and certainly not the most creative. I mean, again, I'm okay in creativity, but I was one of the worst students imaginable, you know, except at Oberlin, where I majored in Gary studies, which well, even then I got a B in that, you know. They were like, you don't really know yourself that well. But, you know, that is one of the questions that I wanted to raise in Vera, just how much pressure we put on children today and how that felt so, as a child of immigrants especially, because so many of these kids, like the school I went to, Stuyvesant, is I think 90% immigrants now, or if not more. There's a couple of Upper West Side Jews that still wandered in there by accident, but that's about it. You know, they're like, is this Sarah Beth's? I'm like, no, this is hell, my friend. This is hell.
I think we have time for one or two questions from the audience. Should we give somebody else a chance?
Or complaints, yeah.
Okay. I see one right here in the middle. Wait for the microphone, please. Yeah.
During the entire discussion of Vera, you talk about faith and belief, but the other meaning out of the Latin, Vera, is truth, which is the exact opposite. Right. Was that in your head while you were writing this, or was that completely just another? Yeah,
well, thank you. We have a Latinist here, which is always very good. Italiano, oh, marron. Mi piace, tutti italiani. You are the best people. Mi suono. My dream is to live there. And Sicilia, Key West. Sicilia, sì, Key West, direct flight. Stone crab, spaghetti with pine needles. But our Italian-American Latinate friend is correct that the roots of this they do go to both, and you're also correct in the fact that it's opposite. Meaning I was solely as a Slav, or, well, mostly Jewish, quarter Slav. My great-grandfather was the grandchild of a Russian deacon, which is easily the drunkest member of the Russian clergy, which, I don't know, it's just 24/7 drinking. Yeah, Duval Street is where they go to die. But I was thinking purely of the Slavic definition of Vera as belief or faith, and the Russian word for truth is pravda, which was the newspaper that never told the truth in its 70-year existence. No, it's still around. It's still around. Communist Pravda is still around. So that is the difference in thinking. But yes, correct, because in a sense, Vera it's about faith, non-religious faith, but it's also about her search for truth. So in some ways, you are correct, yes. Thank you.
We have a question in the balcony.
Ooh, there's a balcony?
Yeah, we're up here. I just had a quick item, which is I read many years ago, or 7 or 8 years ago, your essay in the New Yorker on your watch fetishizing.
Fetishizing. Yeah.
I'm curious. I'm mostly curious how that sort of clear focus on like devices and mechanics and like the kind of whimsical genius of them fits into your clearly dystopian worldview.
Thank you. That is a great question. I like the way you layered different kinds of technology on it. So weirdly enough, as somebody who teaches at the Columbia Institute for Exceptional Individuals, also known as our MFA, Masters of Fine Arts, for those of you not in the know, I find this interesting is that people in their 20s, I find, are actually really returning to mechanical devices, be it vinyl records that they're completely gaga over, to our friends, the watches that I discovered as a kind of sad middle-aged hobby for myself. You know, I can't golf. I can't sail a boat. I can't afford to own a boat. So this was, this is easy. You can wear it on your wrist. And this actually started the day I realized that Trump was going to win in 2016, and I needed something to take my mind off it. But watches are this incredible, in New York, it's a secret community, and there's a lot of young people who really love watches, and they all meet in a secret club. You can't reveal the location of it because there can be like $10 million of watches down there. What keeps all these mostly men together? I think Asperger's, for sure, people are like, oh, I like your, reference 6157. Does that have the 312G movement or the 311A? What they're really saying is, I'm so lonely, I don't know how to talk to a woman, or a man, for that matter, but here we are. So it's been really, and it's a kind of almost like Illuminati type thing where, when COVID struck, I didn't know how to get a vaccine, but I talked to the head of the captain of my watch brigade, and he was like, your whole family, 9 a.m. tomorrow, Harlem Hospital. We were probably the first people vaccinated in New York because of watches. So it's also this underlayer of scary stuff, too. But I really, as somebody who, again, very scared of dictatorships, the past 10 years, watches have really helped me in that kind of very nerdy, Asperger-y way, just take my mind off things because, and then you meet these people and you do feel a strange sense of kinship. Also, most of my friends growing up were women because I have, I don't know anything about sports or finance. That's what men in New York talk about. I don't know any of these subjects. But this was some of my first good male friends have happened because of watches. So now all genders I can represent in my fiction.
Well, to male friendship, Gary, thank you for your friendship on stage today. Buy his books, buy them all. You'll keep laughing like you've been laughing for the last 45 minutes. Thank you, Gary. Wonderful to have you here.
Wonderful. Thanks, Arlo. Great to be here.